Welcome to Lattes and Lattes, the podcast where we blend the world of law and business with a warm cup of information and common sense. I'm your host, Sidney Whelan, attorney, real estate investor, and business owner. Each week, we'll be your go-to source for legal insights, business advice, and so much more. Whether you're a seasoned professional, an ambitious entrepreneur, or simply someone seeking guidance, we'll have you covered. From navigating the legal landscape to empowering you with valuable business strategies, we'll explore the legal side of life and enjoy a virtual latte along the way. So, grab your favorite latte, get comfortable, and let's dive in to Lattes and Lattes. Welcome back to Lattes and Lattes, the podcast where we talk about law, business, wealth, and legacy in a way that actually makes sense. I'm your host, Sidney Whelan, founder of the Whelan Law Firm, serving North Central Missouri businesses and families in 3 convenient locations, Moberly, Carrollton, and Paris. Have you ever noticed that almost everyone has a turning point in their life? It may come in different forms. Sometimes it's the birth of a child, sometimes it's the loss of a parent, and sometimes it's a health diagnosis, or maybe a divorce or a business failure. But almost all of us can look back and identify those moments that forever changed the way we see the world. One of those moments happened for me when I was only 25 years old. My dad was 55. He was the center of my world. He had never been seriously sick a day in his life. He owned a small construction business and worked harder than anyone I've ever known. He spent his days on a bulldozer building terraces for local farmers, taking whatever work he could find and working long hours because that's what good providers did. Then, one day, we received the diagnosis: terminal cancer. Almost overnight, everything changed. As the oldest of 3 children, I remember sitting with my dad talking about his dreams. He wanted to build his dream home on the little 20-acre farm where we lived. He wanted to take more vacations. Growing up, we didn't travel to expensive resorts. Our vacations were long weekends, spent camping in a tiny camper about 30 minutes from home. Looking back, those weekends became some of my greatest treasures. I can still remember waking up before daylight to go fishing with Dad while everyone else was asleep. The lake was calm, the conversations were simple, and coming back to camp where breakfast was cooking on a little camp stove. If you've never experienced that, it's hard to explain just how good that breakfast tasted. Those weren't extravagant vacations by any means, but they were rich in time and memories, rich in love. Dad worked his entire life believing there would always be time later. Later to build the house, later to travel, later to enjoy life. But later never came. He died before retirement. I remember making a promise to myself. I wasn't going to spend my whole life waiting for someday, because someday isn't promised. That decision has shaped nearly every major choice I've made since then. I've worked hard, I've built businesses, I've taken risks, I've traveled even when I didn't feel completely ready. I've bought the motorcycle, I've gone on adventures, not because I was wealthy and not because the timing was perfect, but because I learned very young that life has an expiration date and none of us knows when it is. Now, before anyone misunderstands me, this isn't an argument for living irresponsibly. It's not permission to spend everything you've earned. As an estate planning attorney, I believe deeply in preparing for the future. I help families every day create trusts, protect businesses, reduce taxes, and preserve wealth. Planning matters, savings matters, investing matters, and insurance matters. So does estate planning. But here's what I also know. Too many people postpone living. They postpone the family vacation. They postpone starting the business. They postpone learning to fish with their grandchildren or taking care of their health. They postpone telling people they love them. They postpone pursuing the dream God placed in their heart. They're waiting for everything to be perfect. The problem is that perfect has a way of becoming never. I've represented enough families after unexpected deaths to know that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. I've watched people leave behind millions of dollars and unfinished lives. I've also watched people leave behind modest estates, but extraordinary legacies because they invested their lives in people. The greatest inheritance isn't always financial. Sometimes it's memories or wisdom. Sometimes it's courage. Sometimes it's the example of a life well lived. So today, I want to challenge you with 3 questions. First, what dream have you been postponing because you're waiting for the right time? Second, what experience would your family remember forever if you made it happen this year instead of someday? And third, if your life unexpectedly changed tomorrow, what would you regret not doing? Maybe your answer is taking that trip. Maybe it's buying that fishing boat. Maybe it's spending more Friday evenings with your grandchildren instead of answering emails. Maybe it's starting the business you've been talking about for years. Or maybe it's finally creating your estate plan so your family isn't left carrying unnecessary burdens. The goal isn't to choose between preparing for tomorrow and enjoying today. The goal is to do both. Build wealth, protect wealth, but also build memories, protect relationships, build a life you're actually excited to wake up and live. I've often said that your estate plan is about more than documents. It's about stewardship. It's about intentionally deciding what kind of life you want to create and what kind of legacy you want to live. Your will tells people where your property goes. Your life tells people what mattered most. Those 2 things are very different. As we close today, I want to leave you with this one thought. One of the greatest gifts my father ever gave me wasn't something he planned. It was the lesson I learned from watching a life that ended way too soon. His passing taught me that life is precious, that work has value, but it isn't everything, that relationships matter more than possessions, and that memories often become our greatest wealth. So yes, plan wisely, save consistently, build your business, protect your family, create your estate plan. But don't spend so much time preparing for tomorrow that you forget to live today. Because the life you're building should also be a life you're enjoying. So don't forget to live it. Thank you for joining me today on Lattes and Lattes. If this episode encouraged you, would you do me a favor? Share it with someone who's been waiting for someday. And remember, build it, protect it, and then pass it on. Have a great week, my friends.
This podcast episode contains general information for discussion purposes only. Each case is different and must be judged on its own merits. Missouri rules generally prohibit lawyers from advertising that they specialize in particular areas of the law. This show should not be construed to suggest such specialization. Nothing on this show should be taken as legal advice for any individual case or situation. This information is not intended to create an attorney-client relationship, and the listening or viewing of this podcast does not constitute an attorney-client relationship. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.